And good afternoon. This is WYEP 91.3 FM. And look at these fine WYEP folk here. Okay, I can see them, you can't, but you heard them, and these are the people that make this radio station possible with their support, and we greatly appreciate that. We also greatly appreciate the ability to bring you live music from artists that we are excited about. We're definitely excited about Julien Baker. She has a new release out. It is called Turn Out the Lights. Carnegie Lecture Hall is when where she's going to be playing. And Julien, welcome to WYEP Land.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And please bring us a song.
Okay, sure.
It's what you needed so bad. Oh, and it's true. There's nothing that we could do.
91.3 WYEP. We're here with Julien Baker. A new album called Turn Out the Lights. Carnegie Lecture Hall is the place to be tonight to check out her show. Julien, you will be turning 23 at the end of September. And in many ways, it feels like you're a veteran just when I read your history and how long you've been making music. Does it feel that way to you at all?
Oh, does it feel as if I'm a veteran? I suppose it's hard to know. I think I'm reluctant to apply that terminology to myself because I feel saying you're a veteran of something insinuates is that you are familiar with every aspect of it. And I think one of the things I appreciate so much about touring is that it is continually providing me new challenges and opportunities for growth, like as my career changes. Like, so I've been touring since I was 16 years old, but for half the time I was touring, I was doing DIY gigs, and very much different than like having a booking agent or playing theaters or playing concert halls, you know? And so I feel each year I discover new opportunities for growth or areas to improve, you know?
Let's go back to the DIY days. And because I think there's a lot of people that are starting out in that way. I mean, that's sort of a testing ground. It will certainly throw you into the fray. You just figure out whether or not it's something that you can even begin to handle. So tell me about those very first days, those very first gigs, and what that was like for you, why you chose to do it.
Oh my gosh. I think you must have a passion for the thing you're doing, whether it's music or anything else. Like if you're an artist or if you travel for some other occupation, or if you're an athlete even, like your passion for that thing is exhibited in like your dedication to it, no matter what your obstacles. I was telling a story on the way into Pittsburgh of one of the first times we came and played here, and I was in a band with 3 of my friends from high school, and we blew a tire, and then I had to pull the money out of my savings to pay for us a tire, and like cried in the mechanics. Like we were all so broke and late for the show in the following town, and I was just crying, like emptying out my savings. But the shows, I think that was when we played at Mr. Roboto, and I remember that show particularly being insane for me because we were a tiny band that just put our music up on Bandcamp, and when we played here in Pittsburgh, there was one person who knew all the words that we had never met. And I remember thinking, like, how amazing is that we've never met in person, and I don't have many aspirations for myself in terms of accolades or public recognition, and yet this person really connects with the music, and we've established this bond without ever being in the same room. So that makes it worth it for me, worth all kinds of things.
It is the magic of music. You know, when you create something and you put it out there, you know, as you're creating it, it's yours. But when you put it out there, it becomes somebody else's. I'm sure you've had that experience.
Absolutely. It belongs to the listener then. But it's freeing for me, I think, to understand as I continue pursuing my craft and trying to situate myself within the context of the larger musical community. Understanding my role as an artist becomes more and more about appreciating the role of the listener and the audience, because the audience, hello, thank you guys. I guess there is something to be said about the individual isolated gratification of art, but I find that it, like for me, art derives all of its worth from being shared. And so without that reciprocal effect, like my art is only half of its meaning. So I enjoy hearing what other people get out of my music, you know?
Well, Julien, a lot of your songs are incredibly, I don't know, they feel intensely personal. I mean, you're sharing things about addiction, you're sharing things about mental health. That's a risk. But in any relationship, and if you're talking about the artist and the audience, well, that's what builds trust. I would think that, you know, you have an incredible bond of trust and vulnerability that go hand in hand with your audience.
I think so. I think it was modeled for me in how the musicians and just the people that I looked up to when I was first starting out playing music behaved, in that music is a respite, but not one that's isolated. It's like a refuge that can be shared among other people. And so when you have the confidence or the bravery to be very vulnerable in a very public space, that I think exhibits for other people that it is okay to be vulnerable. And many times, like, we don't know that we can do something, or we don't feel safe doing something until we observe another person do it. You know, like, I think there's so many times before I started playing music where I was more reticent and like withdrawn. And I think putting your feelings inside another vernacular that's not just direct interpersonal communication sort of insulates you from the intensity of the emotion, and that the emotion gives it like a creative blanket, you know?
And if you found your way to this sound that you're creating here on stage and on this new album, but that wasn't the original sound. It sounds like you've gone through several permutations as far as discovering what it is that you finally wanted to record. Can you talk a little bit about like that evolution of your music?
Oh, sure. So I played in bands for all of my teenagedom, and when I moved to college, I didn't have anywhere to, my band did not move with me, and so I would just write songs in my dorm or in the music building, and they were limited to what I could do with just myself. And at that time, I also realized that when I was younger, I sort of leaned on the crutch of flashy instrumentation to like prove my chops as a guitarist. And also I did the same thing with lyrics that were really purple and like, prosaic and like convoluted, and started trying to challenge myself to write something poetic with as little moving parts as possible, you know? Because there are songwriters that I find amazing who employ 2 or 3 chords and seem to be able to utilize those more fully than I can with, like, you know, like a raised fifth and like this weird accidental thing, and like look at how fast I can shred. So I tried to not do any more of that, and then I made this record and didn't think people would like it.
Well, we have a lot more questions to ask you, but you know what? Julien Baker, we'd love to get a couple more tunes right now here on WYEP.
Sure, I can make that happen for you.
My heart is gonna eat itself. I don't need anybody's help. It's just me. It's been dug out like a strip mine till there's nothing left. Oh, the chorus in between my ears until I go deaf. Ooh, that remind me exactly what I am. Every chance they get. Am I a masochist, screaming televangelist, clutching my crucifix of white noise and static? Oh, my prayers are just apologies. Hold out a flag till you come for me and do it. Turn into light. If I burn alive. If I burn alive. I was born cutting teeth on the curb, summoning ghosts up from the concrete. Keep me company while I learned shadow boxing with giants that grew from our feet. And I know that you don't understand, 'cause you don't believe what you don't see. When you watch me throwing punches at the devil, ooh, it looks like I'm fighting with me. But there's a comfort in failure, singing too loud in church, screaming my fears into speakers like a lapse or a burst, whichever comes first. And I know you were trying to help, but you're only making it worse. Would you tell time. Strike me down, folded over your arms. I'm an unloaded shotgun, dismantled and harmless. Even you couldn't manage to pull the fuse from the back of my head. When you tell me you love me, tell me you loved me. I wanted so bad to believe you. Tell me you loved me. Tell me you loved me. I wanted so bad. I wanted so bad to believe you. Tell me you loved me. Tell me you loved me. I wanted so bad to believe you. Tell me you loved me. Tell me you loved me. I wanted so bad. I wanted so bad to believe.
.91.3 WYEP. Julien Baker has a release out called Turn Out the Lights. I erroneously said you were playing tonight. You're not. You're on your way to D.C. We're just lucky to get you here at the
Oh my
studio.
goodness, I wasn't gonna blow your spot, but when you said that,
You're so kind.
I looked at my tour manager like, "Are we playing
Yeah.
tonight?" I had no idea.
No. No, you're on your way to play in D.C., and I think like Courtney Barnett's going to be playing, and Florence and the
Yes.
Machine. You're going to be playing with on a festival with her, and Father John Misty a little bit later on down the line.
yes,
So
yes.
I think, it's time to be honest with yourself and say, dang, this is my career.
Truly,
Yeah, you're there.
it's yeah, it's wild. Things like that happen, or I'm booked on shows where I get the immense privilege of opening for artists that I have looked up to and revered for a long time, and it never feels normal, like it doesn't ever feel like I would get booked on a festival with these people. It's like perpetually surprising to me, but that's something that I hope I can retain, the sense of wonder and appreciation. Otherwise, I would have to say I was a little bit jaded were that not to just fill me with awe, when those things happen. Or the fact that just like any of you are in this room listening to my music, it's pretty awe-inspiring, I think.
And an album that you self-produced, too.
Oh, this
That's
one.
a big step.
Yeah. Making this album was really important, I think. After Sprained Ankle, which was unplanned, I wanted to try to see what would happen if it were planned. But if I continued limiting my palette, so I think it would have been a misstep to have gained access to more resources than I had when I was producing Sprained Ankle, and all of a sudden think, like, now a maximalist approach to writing is what is needed, because I think I want to be able to make art that retains its value minus its embellishments. But it was nice to be able to add, strings and winds, and to work with in a studio. I made it at Ardent in Memphis, which is where I grew up, so that felt very gratifying to be able to do it in a local, legendary place.
Now, you just mentioned Memphis. You grew up in Memphis. Pretty religious family?
Yeah, in and out. I mean, I think that what I find myself explaining to people a lot about the South, and I suppose that this is true, or I've noted that this is true, it's less a geographically like north, south, east, west thing, and I find that it's true maybe rural versus conservative, but particularly in the South. I mean, it's called the Bible Belt for a reason. That the religiosity is ingrained in the culture, that it's like a compulsory behavior, that I feel like the default is to be a religious family, or the default is to go to church, and you, or at least I, things are different now. It's been 23 years since I was born, but I was born into a culture where you're pretty much born immersed into traditionalist Christian right-wing values. And then anything that challenges that, you have to do the work of getting back to like centrist ideology before you can even entertain something to the left. I know that this is my right. This is for your benefit.
Well, you're a very out lesbian, and you at some point you had to have that talk with your parents. And from what I've read, maybe there was a little projection on your part about what you thought they were going to do as to what the actual reaction was.
Absolutely. My parents were unsurprised, I think. But also I remember my father, like, I tell the story all the time, but it's worth repeating because I think it's such a great encapsulation of having my fears and assumptions turned on their head that could be applicable to, like, how I think the model of enacting your faith should look. But when I came out to my dad, I thought he was going to just, like, kick me out of the house, and, like, I would be totally ostracized from the family. And I told him I thought I was going to hell, and then he, like, got out this, like, massive Abingdon and Sons, like, annotated study Bible, and was, like, sat with me for, like, multiple hours going through a theological argument of why queer people are accepted and beloved in the kingdom of God. And I thought that was massively powerful and indicative of his character, but also such a great way to like, that is the model of faith that I have in my mind, that makes it so heartbreaking when I see faith weaponized in our current like socio-political context, and it's like pretty infuriating. But whatever.
Well, you
I won't just like.
There's a podcast, Queerology, a podcast on belief and being. So you spent an hour talking about faith and this balance. And I have to say that I think that you're somebody who has put a lot more thought into faith than most people that I know. So clearly, it is something that is important to you and that you think very deeply about.
It's true. I think, although I find myself to be an intense person, but when I was a kid especially, I think the fact that I had what seemed to me like a paradox of identity, like knowing undeniably that I felt that there was a God and that entity was very real to me, and then being informed by culture that God did not love me, but feeling like that was wrong. I think that moral existential tension animated me towards being very inquisitive and very engaged with faith, and probably made me, in the long run, have a healthier relationship with faith, which is ironic because for many queer people, several queer people that I know personally, is the complete opposite. Being scorned or rejected by the church constructed a number of unhealthy dynamics for them with faith. But again, I think just like trying to discern or figure out a way to reconcile these two non-negotiable elements of my identity made me kind of more comfortable with contradiction or the gray area between things like oxymoronic opposites. I don't know. I feel like my life is just, a practical joke is too, like, bleak. But I mean, there's like some comedy in how things unfold ironically. I have terrible, like, social anxiety and stage fright, performer by trade. You know, just like, but having your ideals refuted is like the healthiest way to grow as a person. So maybe I'm just very lucky that I get so many opportunities to be challenged.
Well, you know, when you assume, when something is just handed to you and you assume it's yours, there's no questioning it. When you question something, it gives you the chance to grow stronger in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like that's something that I'm grateful for. And I'm grateful for having these conversations. I think that's something people bring up to me personally when we first meet more often than not. And I feel, I feel all right with that being part of my identity as a person who is vocal about those things. Not in any self-aggrandizing way that it is somehow my duty or that I'm more entitled to speak on it because of some higher knowledge that I've achieved. But I think that like modeling is so important. I know I've said that like 3 times, but and like visibility and representation is so important. So anything I can do to inhabit a reality that other people don't think is possible and reject that unfortunate like schism, I want to do.
It's Julien Baker that we're talking to, a new album, called Turn Out the Lights. And, well, we don't want to turn out the lights until we get another song.
Aw, I like that. I got a tune. Thank you guys for listening. You in the room. And then also, I'm just like imagining someone just tuning in their car. Hello. Traffic will ease up presently. Oh, that's so crazy loud.
There's a hole in the drywall, still not fixed. 'Cause I just haven't gotten around to it. Besides, I'm starting to get used to the gaps. I wish you could find some way to help which is worse? Can you help me? I just wanted to go to sleep. But when I turn out the lights, when I turn out the lights, there's no one left between myself and me. But when I turn out the lights, when I turn out the lights, when I turn out the
It's Julien Baker here on 91.3 WYEP. And remember, a good way to support the artists that you love is make sure you check out their music.